Tonight's scheduled broadcast will be brought to you by lying, cheating, and stealing. Welcome to the Tornado Tag. What's going on, everybody?
Lying in professional wrestling, I don't believe it.
I know. Whoever
I'm
lies, cheats,
shocked.
and steals right before the Christmas holidays, 2 days before Krampus shows up, that could be bad news. You can get thrown into a knapsack and murdered, you know?
Yeah.
I don't think your mic's even on. Try that again, Lily. No, I turned you down. Unmute yourself. There she is.
Hello.
There's Lily. Our resident Hispanic for tonight's episode.
I bring the Latina heat.
Yeah. So if we say something wrong in Spanish, you can correct
I'll
us.
definitely let
If
you know.
you say something wrong in Spanish, let's play the percentage.
I've been known to butcher some words in my day, you know. But yes, welcome to the ABJ podcast. Presents Tornado Tag. Myself, ABJ, alongside BP Burke and Lily from Witchcraft by Lily. We're all hanging out here doing an episode about Eddie Guerrero, which we'll get into momentarily. Please check out the links below to support the podcast on all major podcast platforms. If you're listening to this later on the audio side, leave us a review. 5-star review goes a long way. You can find us on all your favorite ones, Spotify, Apple, the whole nine. And, there are links below to support everyone on the show and their social medias, as well as, buy some merchandise. We got some cool stuff that would really help us out going into the holidays. A couple bucks here and there on a t-shirt sale would be awesome. Also, huge thank you to our big sponsors, Ruta Entertainment and the HTW Network. So super excited for that one. BP, let's kick off our beginning of the show here with our little normal banter that we do. We're fresh off of War Games. We did a whole episode on the history of War Games. Did this year's War Games live up? Did you like it?
I thought they were good. There have been better, for sure. The women's War Games, I think it really started to kick off once the cage started to fill up a little bit.
Yeah,
and had some fun things at the end. Same thing for the men's War Games. I thought it was well booked, well laid out. I was incredibly tired, and that kind of affected my personal enjoyment of the match, but I think that was more about me and less about the match.
Mm-hmm.
But all in all, I thought it was solid. I thought it was a solid pay-per-view.
Yeah. And then the Monday Night Raw after, we got the breakup of the New Day.
Well, kind of. It seems like they're Big E shunted out, but it seems like Woods and Kofi are united as heels, which this is only the second real run Kofi has had as a heel. He had a very brief run when the New Day first started, and now he is back in that thing. And I just kind of instinctively dislike Kofi as a heel because I always think of him as that Ricky Steamboat or Tito Santana type guy who's just the eternal babyface. No matter what happens, they're going to be on the good side. But it was definitely time for a new coat of paint for them. It was getting very stale.
I don't like the book. So they argue and fight with each other because they're mad at Big E. Then they don't even think Big E's there because they're like, we miss him too. For Big E to come down and them immediately to bond with each other and hate him, it didn't make a lot of sense.
I think it was more like, a lot of our issues, we're going to blame you for them, and now we're going to come together, but you definitely have
But they were literally about to break up as a team, and then Big E came down, and they're like...
Well, we don't know that.
Maybe but then they realized it, and they were like, you know what? Look at everybody who came back in the time of that they came back in, and he's been gone for 4 years, and he hasn't been back. You know what? Maybe he didn't really like us that much. Like, I get where they went.
It was all over the place.
I kind of get where they went with it, though.
And we don't know what they were going to say.
Like
you're assuming they were going to break up. They could have said, we've been all about the power of positive. They just said you're not going to like what we have to say, and it's not your fault. It's like they were giving the mom and dad are getting divorced vibe.
Yeah, it was very. I said that while we were watching. I'm like, this is like mom and dad's divorcing, and
it's quite obviously what they were going for, but. It could have been they could come out next week and say, maybe the power of positivity isn't that powerful after all, and it's time to look at something new. Because it would have been a weird way to do a breakup because we've just amicably decided to part ways. It's not how you do a breakup, especially if nobody's turning. But then it turns out they're both turning.
When Big E dropped the mic, I was like, are they gonna bump him? Is he getting bumped right now? He's coming back.
I think he was genuinely hurt by that statement because that was when he was like, I'm trying to remember exactly what he said. He was like, you're the disappointment, or like, oh no, he called him a burden. And right when he said, you've been a burden, that's when he dropped it, and I was like, oh, did that one really hurt him? Like, did that
No, he's acting,
sting him a little
Yeah,
bit?
but here's the thing though. I know it's acting, and sometimes the best storylines have
a little
a little
truth to it.
shred of
Yeah,
realism
of
to it.
course.
And
All of them do.
it's gotta hurt because that team means something. Like I've always said from the beginning, and coming from the white guy, right? I'm not trying to speak for a culture, but most of the time in pro wrestling, people of color, especially black men and women, get typecast into a certain type of role, especially in pro wrestling. And I felt like the New Day was so different. They were so like they're black dudes in rainbows and pancakes and being funny and not being hoods or thug and being positive and loving and
Or even in
caring.
Kofi's case, being a fake Jamaican. He was a fake
Yeah,
Jamaican
like,
for the first 2 years of his
and
career.
it was so different, and I loved it. And I really, really liked the New Day. And I hope that this turn is just for like a moment to kind of bring Big E back. He kind of has their comeuppance, and then they find the way to come back together, because I feel like the New Day is too powerful to completely throw away forever.
Oh, of course, it's everybody comes back. The breakup is just so you can set up the reunion tour. That's how it always works. I mean, a lot of that hinges on Big E being able to wrestle again, which we don't know. We can
He
speculate
lost
all
a
we
lot
want.
of weight.
Well, he has a neck injury that affects your weight, like what you can do to build
I
strength.
bet you if I had a neck injury, I'm gonna be fat as fuck.
Right. Well, yeah, but he's a little more disciplined than you or I.
Oh Lord!
So,
I stub my toe and I throw 30 pounds on.
That's
you know
that
what I mean?
big back energy.
You know what I'm saying? This dude broke his freaking neck and dropped 150. This guy's crazy looking. He looks good though. He looks good. But anything else news wise wrestling?
I know some of the big things. Saturday night's main event is taking shape. I'm gonna be watching it on DVR because I'll be busy that night. But Saturday night's main event is really taking shape now. They've announced Cody Rhodes against Kevin Owens for the WWE title. I believe we did officially get, if I'm not mistaken, Finn Balor against Gunther for the World Heavyweight title. The Women's United States title,
which will end in interference and then lead to a triple threat.
You don't say. Right now, there's a lot of interference, and on Raw, there's a lot of interference, and everybody's turning. That's what I've like, and not well. That's just a WWE thing. There's been a lot of turns this year, like a lot of turns.
What did you think about Drew McIntyre's comeback?
I was fine. Like I'm glad he's not turning. He needs to stay heel.
I just need someone to clarify though why he would be after Sammy.
So his whole justification for turning heel in a year ago, around the time of War Games, was I got screwed over at Clash at the Castle. I hate the bloodline. I hate anybody who's friends with the bloodline.
Oh, okay.
And he turned on Jey Uso because Jey Uso was part of the bloodline, and you may have fooled all of them, but I know you're still a piece of garbage. I hate you for what you did to me. So Drew McIntyre, one of the things that makes him such a highly effective heel, and this is a Michael Hayes thing. And Michael Hayes may not have invented it, but he's the one that's always championed is saying this. Every heel, every bad guy in professional wrestling, to be effective, has to deep down in their heart of hearts believe that what they do is right. To believe that they are just what they do.
Justified that you can look at them and be like, you make a little sense. Like, I hate you, but I like what you're doing.
You can't just be twirling your thumbs. And I'm doing it because I'm evil, unless you're Ultra Manus, and it definitely works.
It always works.
Right. But every villain should see themselves as the hero. And it's all of you that are wrong. And that and Drew McIntyre does that so well.
So speaking of Saturday night main event, next week's episode is going to be the history of Saturday night main event. We're going to do the history of Saturday night main event, kind of get you guys caught up on that old school vibe. So if you want to do some homework, go watch some old school Saturday night main events. The following week after that, we'll be doing the history of the ECW Television Championship, brought to you by Ruda Entertainment. We have the belt back there. There may be some things coming up where I'm not saying they're going to be big, nice, big boy, expensive belts, but we might be able to get some of these brass titles or these lighter weight. The best way to describe them is literally the foam title belts. If you put a little bit more love into it, put a brass plate on it, put it on leather, but it has that same vibe and same feel. They're great for kids, great for props, great for all that. So maybe, just saying, maybe going into 2025, there may be some opportunities for giveaways for the channel. So maybe we do the history of this title. we might do a giveaway on the channel about it. We'll see how it goes, or maybe we'll do something locally at a show. Like if you watch this show, come to this next show at PPW, and if you answer the bonus question, you get a free raffle ticket to possibly win a belt. You know what I mean? So we'll do some fun things like that.
Yeah.
So with Root Entertainment, we're gonna find some cool ways to get out there and do things. And speaking of Root Entertainment, did you see his new announcement? His what's his name from TNA?
AJ Francis.
AJ Francis is now the new $1 million champion, and that $1 million champion that he's going to carry around.
I think you're saying it incorrectly. It's the $1 million champion.
The $1 million champion,
because he used to be top dollar. See, it's a That's a little.
But that title's going to be carried around and defended and everything like that, and that's a Ruda belt, baby. That's our team. That's a Ruda belt out there doing big things in the independent scene. And then another thing we're going to do is we're going to pre-record 2 episodes. So we're going to kind of put them in the can, maybe even film them on a fun location. Who knows? But the TT,
looking on that, but
the TT Awards are coming up. And just to kind of give you guys a refresher, we will put it all over social media too. But the non-wrestler of the year, it usually goes for managers, most underrated of the year, the storyline of the year, the most improved of the year, the disappointment of the year, the moment of the year, promotion of the year, the commentator.
There's gonna be a fight over that one. Yeah, that promotion of the year, that's gonna be a fight.
I
don't think it's gonna be.
Do I get to have my vote on these this year?
Yes. So you are the third person. So essentially how it goes is if 2 of us come together and we say the same thing and the third person doesn't, we go with the 2. If all 3 of us have something different, we have to state our case and someone has to break and be like, all right, I'll go with them.
If we're able to do this on location, we may have some people there to chime in too. We don't know.
Yeah, we might have some people hanging out with us and contributing as well. Commentator of the year, show of the year.
And why is it me?
Yes. Match of the year.
Wait a minute. All 3 of us can fight for the me thing.
Yeah. You did one show, right? 2 shows.
2 shows. I did 2 shows.
I am absolutely not fighting for myself.
Yeah. Tag team of the year, women's wrestler of the year, overall best wrestler of the year. We do a men and women for that. And that's it. That's essentially our TT awards. And then we're going to do our 2025 prediction show on the 31st. So we will still have 2 episodes on Tuesday. So if you're driving for the holidays, you need something to put in the car on the way there, Tornado Tag has your back. We will be there for your long car rides on Christmas on the 24th, on Christmas Eve. And we will be with you on the 31st if you're driving to someone's house for New Year's or recovering or whatever it may be.
Recovering.
But we will be hanging out with
if you're hungover on New Year's Eve, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Not necessarily, because what if you're hungover since Christmas? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, New Year's Eve is amateur night too, so that is
So we will be oh boy, I did not just see this. It popped up on the screen. Why did that not generate? Why can't I click on it?
I'm not sure what.
All right. Well, so anyway, I can't. For some reason, it's not letting me put it on the screen, but we got a $5 super chat. Oh my God, that's amazing. Thank you so much. EW1 Kicks, keep up the great work and keep dropping the content. Finishing 2024 strong, and 2025 is going to be a much better. Always showing that love with the fingers up. Huge thank you, EW1 Kicks. Make sure you check out their YouTube channel. They do a lot of stuff when it comes to sneaker games and doing a lot of cool sneaker stuff on their end. But huge thank you for that $5 super chat. We haven't got one of those in quite some time, and I don't know why. Oh, there it goes. Let me do it this way. So it didn't show up in the live one, but it goes in the stars. So huge thank. We're gonna leave that up for a little bit. We're gonna leave
you go over there and give EW1 Kicks a follow, all that good stuff.
Yes, please do. Please do. Thank you so much. That means a lot. All right.
Did you get through all of the categories, or did I cut you off?
No, that was all the categories. That was pretty much all we got. But local stuff. Anything going on? Anything you want to plug?
This weekend I will most likely be at AXW. I don't know what exactly I'm going to be doing at AXW yet, but I will be in Orwigsburg, Pennsylvania at the Veterans Memorial for their final show of the year, with our old cohort Andy Header challenging for the AXW championship against O'Shea Edwards. And then he'll have another title match 1 week later at PPW Winds of Winter, which is going to be December 14th. You can DVR Saturday night's main event and come see us if you're local. It's going to be a fun night. We're going to have a battle royal to determine the first person to get to challenge Rembrandt, the new PPW heavyweight champion who shocked the world in November at Engage. We also are going to have a match I'm really looking forward to. And if you've seen either of these two guys work their magic, imagining them together is going to blow your mind. Diego Hill with his first defense of the TV title against Christian Robinson is going to be unbelievable. Unbelievable.
That's going to be a rough one.
We're all.
I don't know what to cheer for.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're also going to have a few other fun matches. I know we have two big women's matches, Nahir Robles and Nahir Robles is going to be there. Sammy Chaos and Zoe Cannon, from Through Legacies Wrestling, made a big debut, but has a huge challenge in her way in the form of Sammy Chaos. We also have some people returning from the Baltimore area, Mara Void, Simone Valentina. They're going to be taking on Nat Castle in a 3-way. Lots of fun stuff coming up. If you're local, if you have certain cable systems, and Service Electric is big on this, WYLN is where you can find High Voltage. It's on Saturdays at 5 p.m., Sundays at 10 p.m. every weekend. New episodes are coming out. And this weekend, if you have access to WYLN, don't miss this one. 2 big title matches from the last show. You two were there personally. I obviously was there. The TV title match that I made for the TV title in my first official act as the general manager of PPW. Diego Hill, Mark Alexander. I might have just spoiled the ending for you a little bit. But Diego Hill and Mark Alexander for the PPW TV title. And then we are going to see Brad Baylor, WWE ID Brad Baylor, and the Neon Ninja Facade for the PPW heavyweight title. And all of the chaos that followed is all going to be on WYLN this weekend.
So huge best of luck and best wishes to Header, who can leave 2025 with 2 world championships for 2 companies.
Well, no limits championship in PPW.
2 champions. Well, it's not world champions, but 2 championships at the end of the year. So that'd be kind of cool for Eddie Header. Go check him out. I know he's doing some bonus content over on the Stardom cast, so go check those guys out. They're doing their own What If as well. They're doing some stuff over there, so show them.
We're trendsetters, baby. We're trendsetters.
We are. We're killing it. But they get a lot more plays than we do. Though. I think one episode gets more plays than I think we've got in the history of the podcast. They're in the millions when it comes to monthly downloads every time. So they're doing way better than we have to talk more Joshi. I think that's what it comes down to. We just gotta.
I'm ready. Do you want to start watching?
No. I don't find it as interesting as everybody.
I just, you know what? It's not even. I like it. I think for me is that I like it because it's very fast paced. You see a lot of action really quickly, but secondarily, their fashion. Oh my gosh, they have the most amazing gear. Like, period.
Yeah,
I like selling though. I like selling.
That's fair.
Yeah, I like ring psychology.
That's fair.
Yeah. I struggle with Japan style wrestling.
The Joshi people are going to be mad at that. No, they're going to be mad at that.
I enjoy both sides of it. I get where you're coming from with like kind of more telling a story, because I can't tell you what any of the storylines are for.
Neither can they.
You know
also,
what I mean?
one of my qualms. They've had some storylines.
Yeah. But they look cool though.
Yeah.
Also, one of my qualms about AEW. I like selling.
So they're very indie smash with Japan. Yeah. I will say this though, we are gonna really I know we've been saying a lot, but we are gonna really double down soon. We have kind of set up our schedule of how we're gonna record stuff. So you are gonna see some more Tornado Tag content when it comes to me and Lily. I actually talked to her today about maybe going back and doing a rewatch. So we are doing Camp Leapfrog.
Excited for this.
But we're also gonna start doing live streams. So it might be like on certain Sundays or certain Fridays if we have nothing going on or something like that, where if we have a free time, we may put out in advance like, hey, we're free this night, we're going to go live. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to go back, turn the clocks back, and we're going to head back to the temple, and we are going to rewatch from the beginning Lucha Underground. I think we're going to go back and we're going to dive in.
Netflix?
So we've been buying it on Amazon. You have to buy it by season. So I only need to own one more season. I think season 4 is like a 2-part season. So I only need to buy one more. But I've been going back and rebuying them because I want to have them. just really think, as much as I love Camp Leapfrog because I was part of it, I also think that Lucha Underground was a special time in pro wrestling that we're never ever gonna get back. Like, it was just so good. It was so well done. I loved it. It's
well,
awesome.
They had a bit of a higher budget than Camp Leapfrog too, for one thing.
Yeah, but
they had a bit of a higher
awesome.
budget, I would say.
Yeah, so we're gonna go back and we're gonna go back to the temple
and one of the main characters in there is Eddie Guerrero's familia.
Yeah, he's very heavily predominant in the very beginning, which is Chavo Guerrero, which I'm sure we'll hear
Yeah.
tons about. So let's turn the clocks back. Let's go check out. And we got a membership tonight. Look at EW1 becoming a member of the channel. Thank you.
Oh, don't you have to do the button?
You got fancy buttons now. And I'm not sure what membership you got, but if you do the $5 and up, you get all that you get new content before everybody else. You get to see a lot of stuff before everybody else gets to see it. So that's pretty cool too. Thank you.
You actually
so much,
get to
EW1.
travel in time and watch us do next week's episode.
Not so this is live, so we don't really. I mean, maybe the TT awards and the end of the year awards you'll get before everybody else, because usually when it's edited, I put it out before everybody else. So and there they are. You can't see him on the screen, but he put up that IC TWF title. I don't know why Streamlabs.
Oh, stop it, Streamlabs.
Streamlabs, they just paid for a membership. Relax. They can do whatever they want. They gave money.
Let them live their best.
Let them live their life, Streamlabs. Jesus. Anyway. Let's get into our topic. Let's lie, let's cheat, let's steal, let's turn up the heat because it is cold here on December 3rd. Another thing too, is there aliens fighting yet? Did you hear this? There's the TikTok prediction of
you had to say
tonight,
that because
tonight was supposed to be a big battle between aliens and humans, and it's going to be a whole thing. It didn't happen. Just putting it out there. Yeah.
Oh, I'm shocked.
Yes,
I'm shocked. Oh my goodness! I thought it was really going to happen this time. I thought it was really going to happen this time.
Y'all are hating, man. It's gonna happen. We have.
I thought aliens were totally real, and they've totally been here, and it was going to totally happen this time. Oh my goodness!
They are.
Well, speaking of aliens, and if we're gonna make that joke, I wanted to go back and rewatch Judgment Day 2004. But it has been taken off the network. And I don't know if it's because of the JBL illegal immigrant thing, or if it's just how bloody that match was.
Eddie Guerrero was a bloody mess in that match. And I know it is the only WWE pay-per-view that I'm aware of, maybe ECW One Night Stand, because they were throwing around colorful language very liberally on those. But as far as like a WWE branded pay-per-view, I believe that is the only one that was branded TVMA, because Eddie Guerrero goddamn almost bleeds to death in that thing.
Yeah. And the funny thing is so if you go and you check out what happened when, there's a couple weeks recently where Bruce Pritchard couldn't be in studio and they couldn't record. So they brought JBL in to do a couple episodes. And I'm going to be honest, I think I might have became a JBL fan. He's excellent telling stories, and he's like, he puts the character aside and he's more himself, and he's a joy to listen to. I thoroughly enjoyed JBL talking Eddie Guerrero stories. It was really, really good to listen to. And he essentially says that Eddie didn't have a blade. He brought a dagger and put it under the commentary desk or under the bell desk. And because he's like, every time I use a blade, my head's so callous I couldn't get deep enough. He goes, I'm going to get deep tonight, brother. And when Eddie hits himself with that, wow, did he hit himself with that?
Oh, yeah, it was bad. It was bad.
He sits in the chair, and the audience is like, oh, like you hear the gasp of the crowd. Like
they would stop the match these days. They literally would stop the match these days.
And Eddie would have.
I only saw a clip of it, and I was like, holy.
Eddie would have burned that building down if he would have stopped that match that night.
Yeah. No, I know. But the other one around that time that I always think of when it comes to bad bleeding, and it was completely hard way, is one time they were doing a match, and it was maybe a year before this. It was around, maybe 2003. Whenever they had Zach Gowen in. Zach Gowen was maybe 2002. One or the other. But he was a one-legged wrestler. He was on TNA. He talk about an ass kick. He was on SmackDown, so JR was on Raw. He never got to call his matches.
Jesus.
So
he's about as useful as a one-legged man in an ass-kicking contest. That was like the
Gowen.
go-to line on the commentary in the video games. All you heard was one-legged ass-kicking contest was a JR line in every fucking video game ever.
Or the one that Steve Austin has kind of stolen. He doesn't know a wrist lock. He doesn't know a wrist lock from a wristwatch. And then Austin's whole thing is I didn't know whether to shit or wind my watch.
Yeah.
So Zach Gowen was legitimately a one-legged wrestler. Was in TNA as Tenacious Z. And so they wanted to steal him from TNA because he was just on a European steal. And John Laurinaitis, in his early days as the GM or like the head of talent relations, JR's old job, signed the wrong one-legged wrestler. He signed a guy who was just like missing part of his foot. And they were like, no, this is the wrong guy. So he had to go and sign Zach Gowen. And he had a match with Vince on pay-per-view. And they did a thing where Vince had a chair up to his head. And then Zach Gowen was supposed to kick the chair like into Vince's head. Like he would do like obviously a drop kick, but he's doing it with one leg because he only has one leg. And Vince held the chair the wrong way. So the chair opened up toward him where the open side was supposed to be facing Zach Gowen. So the chair would just come back toward him. And the chair opened up and the point of it went into Vince's head and blood just started shooting out of Vince McMahon's head. Like just shooting out, not trickling out, just like a spritz of blood. Yeah.
So where can I buy Zach Gowen merchandise now?
I don't know. I don't know what Zach Gowen's doing anymore. I know
that you can
he didn't last long. I think he was having some issues with like I don't know. I think he was having
Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar.
Oh yeah, Brock
Lesnar around arenas,
throwing him downstairs. Yeah, just
throwing him and throwing his one leg into the ring post like F5 in front of his mother.
That's right. Yeah. And so that's around the time of the let's tie it around the ascendancy of Eddie Guerrero into a top level player. But everybody's got to start somewhere, and Eddie, like a lot of great wrestlers of his time, that's why I'm a pro. I know how to tie it back.
You're so good. I knew you were going to bring it in somewhere.
Is part of a famous wrestling family, much like the Harts, much like the Von Erichs, people we've been covering for a while here. Eddie Guerrero is part of the famous Guerrero wrestling family. Hey, our musical director is here.
Yeah, the guy who makes our music. Speaking of music, BP, I know you're not going to be impressed with this, but
it's still pretty impressive.
My wiener can only get so hard, but this kid, the Converse kid, is so good at real instruments, toy instruments, that he has been streaming. So go check out the Converse kid over on Twitch. He's been streaming himself playing Fortnite, but not playing with a controller and not doing the music thing. He's been playing Battle Royale Fortnite with a Guitar Hero controller.
That's very cool.
Trying to win his first game. He did it. He won a game.
Oh, that's awesome.
With a guitar controller. So go check out the Converse kid. Follow him on social media. One of the coolest things I've seen in video games done by somebody I actually know. So one of the cool, it's super, super dope. And he's so good at actual instruments. He's the intro music to every single thing you're going to hear on this channel.
100%. That is super cool. That is very impressive.
Yeah, it's really neat.
So Gory Guerrero, who is Eddie Guerrero's father, the patriarch of the Guerrero wrestling family, is one of the legendary figures of Lucha Libre through a lot of the early days. Had a legendary team with El Santo, who is the number one. Like if you're talking, like you can't quantify the level of fame that El Santo had in Mexico, in America. It would be like, imagine The Rock at the peak of his fame and then stretch it out like 30 years, and that's El Santo. He's the man. There's no debate on who the greatest Mexican wrestler of all time is. It's him. And the race is for second. And he had a very legendary tag team with Gory Guerrero at one point, La Pareja Atomica, the atomic pair, and they were the number one tag team in all of Mexican wrestling. And Gory had children. He had 2 daughters, 4 sons. All 4 sons became wrestlers. His oldest was Chavo Guerrero Sr., who, if you only really watched WWE, you might remember him as Chavo Classic. He came in as Chavo Classic for a little bit. But he was the first of Gory's sons. He and Gory teamed for a while. Gory invented a lot of things. People still use the Gory Special, which is a very intricate submission move. Gory is credited with inventing the camel clutch, So he's had a lot of things that he has contributed to the wrestling business, and then his sons came along. Chavo was a big star in NWA Hollywood. There's well, that's not Chavo. That's a different brother. That's not Chavo. That poor guy. Mondo Guerrero was the second oldest. Mondo had a very good career. Chavo and Mondo would tag team a lot when Gory retired. There was a father-son team there for a bit. And then the third of the four boys is Hector, who is very infamously known as the Gobbledygooker. And before that, he was Lasertron. Lasertron was a robot wrestler, is the best we could describe him in Crockett, like the late days of Crockett, early days of WCW. He was a guy who was a very talented wrestler, but at a time where he wasn't big enough to be pushed in for real in like WWF or the NWA, just undersized. And that's where Eddie kind of fell in. Now there's a really significant age difference. Hector and Eddie are the two youngest of the Guerrero sons. Hector is 13 years older than Eddie. Eddie is most likely what we call an oopsie baby. It's okay. We've had our kids. Our youngest is 13. Oh, you're pregnant again. Okay. So
at Latino heat.
How do I say this? I think that's just a thing with Latino. You know, yeah. my youngest brother.
They're like bunnies.
Hold on, I gotta think. My youngest brother is 20 years younger than me.
There you go. Yeah, it's not uncommon. Like I know people have.
I think it's also an Irish thing too, because me and my brother are 11.
Yeah, but there's only two of you guys. There's 7 of us.
Well, no, the Irish thing is to have 2 kids that have the same birth year and they're not twins. That's the Irish thing. You've never heard of Irish twins?
No, we don't have. I don't have. My kids aren't Irish twins. They're a year apart. They're a year and 2 weeks apart.
Me and my brother look very similar. We're born in the same month, 5 days apart, but 11 years difference.
I'm talking like you were born in like whatever year, 1986.
So Elena was born August of 2012, and then Katie was born August of 2013.
Right.
But it's over a year. It's a year and 2 weeks. If it was like, I get what you're saying. If they had opposite birthdays, then it would still be within that year. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why Eddie and Chavo are only 3 years apart.
Love you guys keeping the chat going too. Appreciate that. Please Eddie, keep them coming. Yeah, Chavo Guerrero Jr. is only 2 years younger than Chavo Guerrero or than Eddie Guerrero. So it's like I have cousins. I'm the youngest in my generation on both sides of my family, but I only have one sibling, and I have an older sister. But I have cousins that are a lot closer in age than me. I have cousins that are like cousins that were my same generation's kids that are like 3 years younger than me. Very, very similar. So that's why like Eddie and Chavo kind of had a very kind of close relationship. And I'm trying to remember which Guerrero it was either Mondo or Chavo. I believe it was Mondo. I know Stephen Chambers in chat put that Mondo was in the movie Running Scared with Gregory Hines and Billy Crystal. I don't know if it was him or Chavo that trained the girls who wrestled for Glow. I know it was one of the Guerreros. And I know when they were doing the Netflix series Glow, Chavo Jr. did the training for that one. Chavo Jr. does. Didn't Chavo help with Iron Claw too?
Yeah, pretty much any wrestling movie or any production. I think he worked with Heels as well, if I'm not mistaken. Most like mainstream Hollywood productions that are going to have wrestling are going to have somebody be like the technical director for the wrestling. They hire Chavo Guerrero Jr. He's like the guy for it.
Who trained everybody in The Wrestler?
I would we know that. We know that.
I'm just trying to get you some heat to see if you forget.
Not Chavo Guerrero Jr. That was all the Wild Samoan Dojo. That was all Wild Samoans doing. I'm just trying.
You're gonna get a Facebook post.
Everything will be fine.
They already hate me. I don't care.
It was Mondo Guerrero. It was It was Mondo Guerrero, and then Chavo Jr. Chavo Jr. was the one that would train for the Netflix series. Even though one of
Heels is going to Netflix now, right? It's
Heels is on Netflix. Heels is on Netflix now.
Yeah.
It's up in the air whether they're going to greenlight a new season because Starz canceled it, but I guess if it does well enough, they will. I thought it was a pretty good show.
Maybe we'll have to. Maybe that'll be another thing we dive into.
It's funny. One of the bad guys who was almost like a Rob Black type character. He's just trying to run this like big money. Yeah, Chavo did do a lot for Lucha Underground. Chavo's very tied into the entertainment business. It's funny. He was on one of those like TLC shows. I think it was like a wedding story. And it was this guy from the Blue Man Group that got married. And they would have like all the friends of the people who were like, and Chavo was his best man, but it's like, yeah, this is my best friend Sal, and it's Chavo Guerrero Jr. Like, oh yeah, his name's not really Chavo. His name's like Salvador. It's like, you're not Sal, you're Chavo. I like how this became an episode about Chavo and not Eddie.
Yeah.
So, and give him his flowers. Very underrated guy in professional wrestling is Chavo Guerrero Jr. for sure. And a lot of that was.
I've never really heard a bad thing about him either.
Neither have I. No. So a lot of the work that kind of formed them. Eddie, apparently the Guerrero family, they grew up in El Paso. Gory promoted El Paso for a little bit. And legend has it, like, they had a wrestling ring in their backyard. They would learn how to do stuff when they were little tiny kids. Especially, you got to imagine Eddie and Chavo, like they have all these uncles and Chavo's dad, and like you're just being thrown around. You're the test dummy for new moves by the time you can walk. And then they said, like, during intermission of the shows Gory put on, he would let Eddie and Chavo Jr. wrestle when they were kids, and he started to make his rounds. By the late 80s, he's still fairly young, like a teenager, like a late teens, early 20s. And he's doing TV jobs for WCW, very famously does one for Terry Funk. He's starting to make his rounds. He's starting to kind of build his brand. And at this point, his older brothers are starting to wind down a little bit. Yeah, Hector's doing Lasertron. Hector's doing the Gobbledygooker. Gory and Mondo are kind of phasing down or working mainly in Mexico at that point. And Eddie's working in Mexico too. In fact, that next generation is coming through. And for a while, Eddie is teaming, just like his father teamed with El Santo. Eddie teams with El Hijo del Santo, who is the son of El Santo. That's literally what it means, the son of the saint. And they are the new version of the Atomic Pair. They're basically the second generation of it, of La Pareja Atomica. And then Eddie is also going to globetrot a little bit. Eddie's going to go to Japan. So did
Eddie meet Jericho while they are in Mexico, or that happens later?
He may have. I don't know where the timelines cross there, because Jericho, I don't know how early he got to Japan. Mexico, rather.
I know Jericho started in Mexico. He did some stuff in Mexico very early. That's where the Lionheart came from.
Yeah, Corazon de Leon was his name down there. Yeah. So I don't know how much overlap there was, and we'll get to that. Let's stick with Mexico for a little bit, because there's two big for a while in Mexico, there was only one game in town. It used to be EMLL, then it became CMLL now, Consejo Mundial de Lucha Libre. And it used to be Empresa. But everybody if you ever hear people in wrestling talk about Arena Mexico, it's CMLL. It is, to this day, and this includes the WWE, it is the oldest continuously run wrestling organization in professional wrestling. It's that old, it's that established. And they would basically, they were the number one biggest thing going in Mexico. But Mexico is a very big place. Mexico is huge. And they ran out of Mexico City, which is a lot farther down. They're literally called Arena Mexico because the Luteroff family that owned the company owned Arena Mexico, which was the big arena there. So they owned the arena, they owned the wrestling, they owned everything. And then eventually some people break off and they form AAA, which is still around to this day. And AAA ran closer to the U.S.-Mexican border. They ran their main city still is to this day Tijuana, and they would, even as they were growing, they would run in Los Angeles. They would run in border towns that had really high Mexican populations where they had TV. And I think AAA may have even had like Gala. I don't think they had Univision, but I think they had like Galavision or one of the other Spanish language TV networks back then at the time. And so when they start AAA, Eddie Guerrero goes over there. El Hijo del Santo goes over there. And the reason I'm not sure if that's where Eddie met Jericho, I know Jericho mainly worked for Consejo. He mainly worked for Arena Mexico. I don't think he ever really worked a lot for AAA. He was mainly with the place where Eddie started, but he didn't work a whole lot. So I don't know if that's where the crossover there started. And Eddie was also working in Japan. And this started a tradition that lasted into the 2000s. It ended about 15, 20 years ago. So you're familiar with Tiger Mask, right? The famous Japanese masked wrestler. So Tiger Mask always had, and it came from an old manga. It came from an old like comic book and cartoon. And Tiger Mask's rival was always the Black Tiger or Tiger of the Dark or whatever you want to call him. So when they brought Tiger Mask out as a real life wrestler, they had to bring out Black Tiger. And Black Tiger was always a guy who was what they would call in Japan a gaijin. He was a non-Japanese person. Black Tiger for the whoever was under the mask for the first couple of decades they did it. Black Tiger was never he was never a Japanese wrestler. It was a bunch of different people. It was a whole lot of different people. For a while, it was the original was Mark Rollerball Rocco, who was a legendary British wrestler. And then Eddie was actually the second Black Tiger. And around this time, I'm thinking this may have been when I want to say this. Misawa, I think, was already out of the mask as Tiger Mask. I think at this point, Tiger Mask would have probably been Koji Kanemoto. But Eddie Guerrero was Black Tiger. Later on, it would become Silver King. Rocky Romero was Black Tiger. And the most recent Black Tiger is somebody we know. It is Ricky Reyes.
Really?
Who was Ricky Reyes was I believe not. There was Tiger the Dark, and that was ACH, but I think the last Black Tiger was Ricky Reyes.
Interesting. Also, Lindsay Dorado made a female Black Tiger mask for Mercedes Moné when she debuted in Japan. She came out wearing a Black Tiger mask because she's such an Eddie fan. That was her tribute to Eddie. She wore a Black Tiger
That's
costume.
True,
yeah.
Yes. Black Tiger had a very nice run there as a junior heavyweight. Won the Best of the Super Juniors in 1996, and Eddie is doing really well in AAA as well. Except they have this idea that let's take Eddie and let's make him a bad guy.
Also, wasn't Black Tiger over in Japan fighting this Pegasus Kid and kicking the shit out of each other?
But we don't talk about Pegasus Kid anymore. We don't talk about him.
Matches are bonkers. If you
can see they probably gave at least one of those guys CTE too. So we don't talk about Pegasus Kid anymore.
Some of the hardest power bombs and German suplexes I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah,
when Eddie power bombed you, he tried to put you through the floor.
Yeah. So Eddie, or I don't know who they've attributed this idea to Mondo Guerrero, but the idea comes because Gory Guerrero and El Santo were famous rivals, in addition to being partners. What if we have Eddie turn on El Hijo del Santo and we recreate that Santo Guerrero feud? So they do that, but at this time there's a guy that's coming to Mexico from a guy from Portland, a guy who is another second generation wrestler. His father Sandy was a wrestler and a promoter and a referee and a lot of other things. It's going to come down to Mexico, and he's going to change things up a lot. And that's Art Barr. And Art Barr, you can't tell Eddie Guerrero's story without talking about Art Barr and talking in detail about Art Barr. Art Barr comes down as the American Love Machine. He's a baby face, has a mask with a big heart on it. But now he is going to kind of push that envelope a little bit, and Eddie's going to help him. So they are going to turn heel. Art Barr is going to join forces with Eddie Guerrero against Santo, and Art's going to not wear the mask, and they are going to be called instead of the Atomic Pair, they're going to be La Pareja del Terror, the pair of terror. And that name didn't last long because one of the announcers, it might have been on like a station where they had announcing kind of in Spanglish, and they said those gringos are loco, because yes, Art Barr was the juicer in WCW, did a Beetlejuice gimmick. He did a Beetlejuice gimmick up in Oregon too. In fact, one of the infamous things he did in Oregon, he was, and I think she was just a manager, and it was very, very controversial at the time. As the whole controversy was going on in 1992 after the Winter Olympics, Art Barr was part of the angle where Tanya Harding was involved in professional wrestling after the whole Nancy Kerrigan thing. Because Tanya Harding was from the Portland area as a Portland wrestling angle. And yeah, she was like I think she was Art Barr's heel manager or something. But Art Barr really...
Wait, you had to put heel in there? I'm just kidding.
Yeah, it was a little redundant. So yeah, that's true. Dirty Dom is... And a lot of heel Eddie. There's a lot of Art Barr in that too. And what they did was they totally renounced Mexico. Eddie Guerrero's like, no, what are you talking about? I'm from El Paso. I'm an American. Like, he's like, Mexico? No way. I'm from Texas. And they would wear red, white, and blue tights. They would wear red, white, and blue jackets. They would taunt the crowd by laying on the canvas and pretend to swim like they were swimming across the border. They pushed the envelope. They pushed the envelope so hard, and then it started with those two, and then the stable started to expand.
Do you think wrestling will ever go that route again, where they push racial and ethnic barriers?
I mean, didn't we just try that with Jinder Mahal, and look how everybody took it?
It depends. It depends on how you do it, but it seems like it often comes off in poor taste. But this is a different crowd. Like the crowd that they had in Mexico doesn't exist anymore.
You know who I think will be the one who would be willing to do it in the WWE, but just hearing him in interviews, he just has that old school mentality of Eddie and his dad and all that. Dom's a savage.
But Dom doesn't care. Dom doesn't really lean on his heritage though, and he doesn't have to. I'm
just saying, I don't think he'd be afraid to do it if it was called for him. I think he would lean into it.
I think it's WWE who would be afraid to do it because those angles tend to not work anymore.
He literally told Logan Paul how great would it be if he just walked out to the ring wearing the green hat that he wore in Japan, like in the woods.
Yeah, I know.
Logan's like, dude, that's not even funny. He goes, but imagine the heat you'd get. Dom is like old school. Let's get stabbed tonight.
but that's the problem that doesn't exist anymore. Yeah, because as much as you want to try to do that, as much as you want to try to have that thing, everybody knows it's a work. And that type of thing worked. And that worked really well in Mexico because either the crowd still believed it was real or they were very, very willing to suspend their disbelief.
Wasn't Piper doing a lot with, was it Hector? Him and Hector? Like that rivalry where he said, I'm going to play the Mexican national anthem, and he played La Cucaracha?
He may have. I don't know. It might have been Chavo because I know Chavo did some stuff in Portland too.
Well, no, this was when Piper went down to Mexico and did some stuff down there for a while, and I think it was one of the Guerreros he rivaled with.
It could have been. Yeah, I don't remember offhand. Definitely wasn't Eddie.
Somebody in the chat will co-sign that for me.
But yeah, this team was really, really, really just getting mega heat, and they're up against Santo, who is like carrying the torch for his late father of being the torchbearer of Lucha Libre, of everything Mexican wrestling stands for. So and they're doing killer business. They're selling out. They're doing big money in LA. They're doing huge money on both sides of the border. They're getting all this attention. And eventually they co-promote a show with WCW. And if you ever get a chance to watch the show, it's incredible. It's a show called When Worlds Collide from 1994, where the main event is Perro Aguayo against Conan in a cage, but the match right under that has a lot of heat and is one of the best tag team matches you'll ever see in your life. It's a very much in the lucha tradition, 2 out of 3 falls, double. I couldn't think of the word. I forget the term they use when it's like a where you're putting up something. But obviously in Mexican wrestling, it's very traditional to do a lucha de apuestas match. So it's an apuestas match is when you're putting up your hair if you don't have a mask. If you have a mask, you're putting up your mask. So this is a double apuestas match where it's Los Gringos Locos, and they're putting up their hair, and I think they had the tag team titles too, against Octagon and El Hijo del Santo, who are both putting up their masks. And this is huge because Santo never lost his mask, and his son never lost his mask. And these people who have turned their back on Lucha Libre, who have spit in the face of Mexico, who are embracing the United States and mocking Mexican wrestlers and their fans, have the chance to take the mask of Santo. It doesn't get any better than that. That is pro wrestling. That is pro wrestling. Yes, very young Ray on that card. Very, very young Ray on that card. Also, another member of Los Gringos Locos, Louis Spicoli, who has had a really weird gimmick at this point. They just called him Madonna's boyfriend. Like, that was his gimmick. He claimed to be Madonna's boyfriend.
Did you see?
Yeah.
Side note: did you see the Weird Al movie yet?
Yes, it's hilarious.
Oh, where he marries Madonna.
It's hilarious. Yeah, and then
What?
Yeah.
What's going on, Hunter?
So, obviously, with all of that being said, the good guys win. They're not going to take Santos' mask. He never lost that mask. He never will, and just like his father never did. So, the Los Gringos Locos, Eddie Guerrero and Art Barr have to shave their heads, and Eddie was freaking out because he thought he was going to look bad with a shaved head. They gave him enough money. They both, and this is in 1994 money. They both made like $7,500 on this match. Because when you would lose your hair or your mask, you get even to this day, if you're losing your hair, you're going to get a lot more money. In fact, that was a big thing in Ring of Honor, where they were going to give Raven more money to shave his head than TNA would, but TNA did a power play on it because Punk was going to shave his head in Ring of Honor, but TNA did a power play. No, you're under contract. You have to do it for us, even though it was less money. And they had Shane Douglas shave his head in TNA. But yeah, Eddie was freaking out about that. But a lot of people were watching this when Worlds Collide show. WWE hired Louis Spicoli shortly after, brought him in as Radford. But a guy who was paying, and it's funny because WCW co-produced this. I don't think they brought anybody in. And Paul Heyman was watching. And Paul Heyman was like, this is what I need for ECW. I need some of these guys. And shortly after this, Psychosis comes in. And Ray comes in. But the first group Conan comes in. But the first guy
ECW made the cruiserweight division for WCW before they.
Oh did. Yeah, but one of the first acts he wants is Los Gringos Locos because they had just turned Public Enemy, who was their big tag team. They had just turned them babyface, and this is the perfect heel team. He wants Eddie Guerrero and Art Barr in the ECW arena in the worst way, and they're hammering out a deal. They make a deal. It's going to happen, and Art Barr dies. Art Barr dies of what is believed to be a drug-induced heart attack in 1994. Just a few weeks after that, when Worlds Collide show, he dies of a heart attack at the age of 28.
Yikes!
28 years old. And what a career Art Barr would have had too, if he would have been able to get his stuff under control. What a career he would have had. So even with Art Barr gone, it changes the philosophy. Eddie's going to come in the ECW. He's still wearing the red, white, and blue tights too, even, but he's coming in as a baby face. Just, I'm Eddie Guerrero. I'm a good wrestler. That is basically what Eddie Guerrero was, and oh, was he good! And he becomes, and we're going to talk a lot. This is going to be a to be continued. I'm going to brush over this, not just because we're running a little long here, but I'm going to brush over this because Eddie very quickly wins the ECW TV title and has some incredible.
We'll talk about it.
Yeah. Has some incredible matches with Dean Malenko, with Too Cold Scorpio. If you watch a lot of the old Malenko Guerrero, they actually, if you watch all the old ECW TV and it has the old commercial still in there, one of the tapes they would advertise for years was just called the Malenko Guerrero Classic. It was just basically a tape with 3 Eddie Guerrero Dean Malenko matches because they wrestled 3 times in ECW, including the last match they had. It was right after Eddie dropped the TV title to Too Cold Scorpio, and it was their last match in ECW. 2 out of 3 falls. They knocked it out of the park, and the roster carried them back to the locker room like they had just won the championship, like they were sports heroes or something. And the crowd's chanting, "Please don't go, please don't go." But obviously they have to. Like it's a money thing. Like, but that was weird because back in that time, like usually it was you sold out. It was like, oh, we hate you. You know, you sold out. You're abandoning ECW. But no, it's please don't go. That's how much respect they had for them.
Yeah. Eddie's so goddamn good.
And he was always an incredible wrestler. He hadn't quite found that spark yet, and he doesn't find it for a little while. He was incomplete. He always had the ring work. He was starting to find the character a little bit in Mexico, but it hasn't totally clicked yet. But you always saw it was there. Everybody that's knew Eddie Guerrero knew him as like, oh, this guy's got something. So he makes his way to WCW. He is a regular on TV. This is around, like, one of the reasons they want to build out the cruiserweight division is Bischoff knows we're getting Nitro. We're gonna be making more content. We make a lot of TV here. We're gonna need bodies, and this is something that can set us apart from the WWF. The WWF was still at the top. You had a handful, and I mean a small handful, of very good wrestlers. Basically, you had Shawn Michaels, the Hart brothers. Jeff Jarrett was pretty good. That's about it. After you get past those guys, you're talking about like as far as like Bob Holly, he tried hard. Like the Undertaker, but the Undertaker is a completely different style.
Yeah, like work rate guys.
It became pretty slim pickings, and they were bringing some guys in. They were bringing like Chris Candido and guys like that. But you want to talk about like world class wrestlers? It was basically Shawn Michaels and the Harts.
Yeah.
Especially that style, like smaller guys, not giant dudes. It was Shawn Michaels and the Harts.
Meanwhile, WCW has a whole division full of them.
Yeah. But the difference is Shawn Michaels and the Harts were near the top in WWF, and the cruiserweights. It was almost like an inverted pyramid. As the show went on, the wrestling got worse, but the names got bigger because your main events are like Hulk Hogan and Roddy Piper and guys like that, and then you go down the card and Ultimo Dragon and Eddie Guerrero and Dean Malenko and that other guy whose name that's escaping me right now. I think it was a Pegasus guy.
Super crazy.
How dare you call him Psychosis? Oh, you're talking about the actual Psychosis.
Yeah,
I thought you were talking about that Pegasus guy.
No.
Or as Bret Hart called him, Hypnosis. He's a great
Hypnosis.
wrestler. He's a great wrestler. So yeah, Eddie is a very, very big part in the cruiserweight division. Although at first he's also wrestling outside of it. He comes back to the cruiserweight division around 97, and but in 95, his first pay-per-view was actually this crazy thing WCW did called World War III, where it was okay. The WWF has the Royal Rumble. What can we do that's better than the Royal Rumble? So what they decide to do is, and it kind of defeats the purpose of what made the Royal Rumble great. What makes the Royal Rumble great is it's never a busy battle royal because people are coming in and out all the time. And if Royal Rumble has more than like 8 or 9 people in at one time, you're like, they got to clear this ring.
Yeah.
So what WCW decides to do is, well, more is better, right? So they have a World War III, which is 3 rings, like how War Games has 2 rings. This is going to be 3 rings. And it's a 60-man battle royal, 20 guys in each ring. And it was so hard to follow.
Could you imagine being on commentating? Like,
well, what they did
Does
for that.
each ring have their own commentator?
Yes. And they would just flip from one set of commentators to the other. So one, it might be, and also this WCW had 1 million people under contract. So one set of commentators might be Tony Schiavone and Bobby Heenan. And then the next one is Eric Bischoff and Larry Zbyszko. And then it's Mike Tenay and Dusty Rhodes or something like that. So each ring had its own set of commentators. And then when you got down to enough people, everybody would start filling into one ring. And I remember this is around the time, 95 was around the time I started reading like dirt sheets and stuff. And there was a lot of speculation on who was going to win World War III because the WCW title was held up. And I guess the idea was floated around like, let's just shock the world. Let's have Eddie Guerrero win it. So they're talking about him as a potential world champion all the way back in 1995. Almost 10 years before. Yeah, almost 10 years before it actually happens. Yeah. It was too soon. It was too soon for it to happen. And I'm not going to complain because Randy Savage won it. I'll never complain about Randy Savage winning the world title. But
did you ever get an Eddie Savage match? Did that ever happen?
Yes, it did. I believe it is on. It was on a Nitro. I wanted that WWE Vault channel, which is incredible. If I'm not mistaken, I believe one of the matches in that 3-hour Randy Savage Mega Mix they put out a few weeks ago is Eddie Guerrero and Randy Savage. I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure they wrestled. on a Nitro. Eddie Guerrero also at this point had a big feud with Ric Flair. That would have been actually in 1996. Ric Flair winds up the U.S. title, beats Conan for it, and he feuds with Eddie Guerrero. Eddie Guerrero actually does wind up with the U.S. title for a little bit, but then we have some injuries and things like that. And where Eddie Guerrero really, 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 maybe he did wrestle Randy Savage. Maybe Arn Anderson and Eddie Guerrero versus Randy Savage and Ric Flair is a match from 1996. So maybe I was wrong about them having an actual match because the only screenshots I'm seeing are from video games.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at too.
Yeah. But it looks like they did have a tag match. And that had to be during that whole time where they were faking a breakup of Arn and Ric Flair as a long con on Sting. So yeah, it looks like they wrestled in a tag match, but never in an actual match, like a single one-on-one match. Like, and that's such a big distinction because like I'm watching Raw last night, and Katana Chance is in that 3-way for the women's Intercontinental title, and it's like she's mainly a tag wrestler. This is her first time in singles competition. Like, it's a 3-way. It's not singles competition. It's literally 3 people. but
you wonder who's taking the fall.
I wouldn't mind to see Katana Chance win that thing. That would have been interesting. But that's fine. Dakota Kai.
I wanted Shayna.
I wanted Shayna too.
I always want Shayna Baszler. I always want Shayna Baszler to win. Shayna Baszler's so criminally underrated. I always want her to win.
That clock is ticking, man. To put a title on her, she's in her late 30s.
Wow.
Yeah, Guerrero actually won a tournament for the vacant U.S. title at Starrcade '96. Yeah, he was one of the few WCW guys that won at WCW NWO Sold Out, which is a horrible pay-per-view. And his ladder match with Syxx is actually maybe the only good match on that show. So that there's also that. But when he comes back from an injury later in 1997, he's going to come back as a bad guy, and he's going to have his kind of trademark run here where he has that feud with Rey Mysterio Rey Mysterio Jr. over the Cruiserweight title. They had that legendary mask versus title match at Halloween Havoc 97. And Eddie is starting to kind of get a little, and he's not the only guy. He's starting to get a little frustrated about that glass ceiling that there is, where if you're not a guy who was in WWF when they were big, Eric Bischoff sees no value in you. The rumor was always that that Bischoff went backstage after like a Nitro or pay-per-view or something, when they had the whole locker room together. And I don't know if this is true. This is all speculation. And he said the only people in this room that have drawn a dime in this business are Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, and Roddy Piper. And Ric Flair was in the room, and everybody was pissed about it. Just pissed.
Yikes.
Yeah. I'm sure Piper was pissed. Piper and Flair were like best friends. I'm sure Piper was pissed at that. So there were a lot of guys like that. There were a lot of guys who felt that Eric Bischoff, Hulk Hogan, Kevin Sullivan machine was holding them down. I have a lot of respect for what Kevin Sullivan did creatively, but he knew where his bread was buttered, and he knew he had to keep Hulk happy, and everything was going well, and there wasn't a need to elevate these young guys. You can keep them down there having great matches on the undercard forever. What? Don't mess it up. And if you're going to mess it up for a guy who would be a star in WWF like Goldberg. Like, we want Goldberg, not Eddie Guerrero. That's the mindset. Eddie Guerrero recognized that, and it frustrated him, and he was kind of open about it frustrating him. So they do try to throw him some bones. He does wind up getting the LWO, which is where basically he's saying like, well, if Latinos aren't going to get their fair shake, we're going to take it, and they wind up doing that as an undercard angle. But eventually, things kind of change because WCW is starting to backslide, not just a little, but a lot. By 1999, WCW is clearly falling behind the WWF. And no matter what they're trying, it's not really working out for their benefit. Like they're pulling out every bag of tricks they can. They're putting Hulk Hogan back in the red and yellow. They're paying Kiss millions of dollars to do a concert on Nitro. They're doing whatever they can.
Meanwhile, there's 6 guys on your roster that you can lean on and change the game. And they all.
Well, I don't know if you're going to change the game, because the WWF was a runaway train. You could improve your own standing, but the WWF was a runaway train at this point. And I love Eddie Guerrero. I love a lot of those other guys. Like even the one that we've been dancing around this whole time. I respect his ability, even if he was a horrible person.
In the end, we don't allegedly.
No, it happened. Not allegedly.
I can't even say allegedly on that one. My bad. Forget the allegedly part.
Even with all the talent those guys had, they weren't stopping The Rock and Stone Cold. They were not stopping They were not stopping the Rock and Stone Cold.
So Conrad asked JBL, he said, so let's rewind the locker room now. You have a bunch of guys who are coming over from your rival company who tried to bankrupt you.
Well, let's set that up. Let's set that up.
Yeah.
Let's explain what happened. So Vince Russo comes in and he's taking over storylines, and that's when we start to get the Filthy Animals, which was Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio, who is now unmasked. He is it's a lot of the guys who were, it was a lot of guys, and this is what like a lot of stables were at that point, and even to this day, a lot of guys who were friends backstage wound up getting in a group together. And the Filthy Animals was definitely one of those groups where it's Conan and Ray and Eddie, and they're feuding with the Revolution, who are a lot of those other guys, Shane Douglas and, well, let's just say his name, Chris Benoit. Oh no, we said it. It's Shane Douglas and Chris Benoit, Dean Malenko, Perry Saturn. So they're building all these things with all these guys on the undercard, and then Vince Russo is clashing with the suits at Turner, and he's trying to do too much too soon, and he's doing a lot of Crash TV and a lot of really goofy stuff. Like, some of his stuff was not working. Chavo Guerrero Jr. You know what his gimmick he gave Chavo Guerrero Jr. when he came in?
Mm-hmm.
I could give you, unless you look it up, I could give you 1,000 guesses. You wouldn't get it. You wouldn't get it.
I have no idea.
Chavo Guerrero Jr. became an Amway salesman.
What?
Yes. Amway was like, I guess, a direct marketing thing back then.
Yeah.
And so the gimmick, it almost makes Kerwin White sound good, doesn't it? He became an Amway salesman. So that was what they had for Chavo Jr. Where when he had his feud with Eddie, that's when he had that Eddie Guerrero is my favorite wrestler shirt, because they did a thing where like Eddie beat Chavo and Chavo had to become Eddie's slave, and Eddie he had to do whatever Eddie wanted. Eddie beat him in a hair match. He started shaving his head, and that's when the whole thing became Chavo's going nuts.
Yeah,
and he just did the crazy gimmick. He had his horse Pepe that he would ride, the stick horse that was so over. Pepe was over, and then I think they did the same thing they did with Moppy with Saturn, where they threw him in a wood chipper.
Didn't Chavo go to get over a lawnmower? Was that Chavo? He used to ride a lawnmower down.
That was the Mexicals. That was the.
I
Mexicals
thought Chavo did that first.
Maybe he did. I always think of the Mexicals doing that in WWE like years later. Hoovy and Super Crazy and Psychosis.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, by the beginning of 2000. The word comes down, Vince Russo's being sent home. Kevin Sullivan's coming back to book. Chris Benoit really doesn't like this idea because of the personal issues they had that we covered on the Kevin Sullivan episode.
Yeah.
And Eddie and Dean Malenko and Perry Saturn are like, okay, so we're just going to get shunted down the card again. And they tried to make nice. They tried to be diplomatic about it. Like, literally, the night this is all happening was sold out. And they had Chris Benoit beat Sid for the WCW title, knowing full well Chris Benoit wanted out. And they were like, well, let's give him the title and see if that appeases him. It didn't. And they already just lost Bret Hart. Bret Hart had his career-ending concussion at this point because of that no-good stinking hyena Bill Goldberg. And so they've lost Bret. Now they're on the verge of losing these guys. And they're just like, well, let them go. If nothing else, we're going to cut their salaries. Just let them go. So the night after Chris Benoit wins the world title on Sold Out, he and Eddie Guerrero and Dean Malenko and Peter, it was either the night after or literally like the week after that, but I think it was the night after. Whenever it was, they show up on Raw in the front row. And you can say a lot of things for the kill shot in the Monday Night War, and I think at that point is where it really did. Just like, there's no way WCW comes back from this. Like, I think their chances were almost nil before that.
Yeah.
But
the best way to describe it, maybe for younger audiences or Lily, it's like AEW right now. When Will Ospreay, Adam Cole, Daniel Bryan, like when those names showed up in AEW, you're like, oh, this is a big moment for this company. When Eddie, Perry, Dean, Chris, and then Jericho all kind of make their debuts in the WWE, people are like, everything we liked about WCW is pretty much now here. And the Attitude Era became that younger generation, and it wasn't the golden era talent anymore. WWE was leaning on its stars, its new stars, its fresh blood. And this injection of these handful of people coming over from that cruiserweight division just really piqued up a lot of ears over in WWE.
Well, at this point, they had graduated from the cruiserweight division, but they were people who were like like a lot of the vocal fans, especially like quote unquote internet fans, were very adamant about giving these guys a push. Especially no disrespect to Perry Saturn, especially Benoit, Malenko, and Guerrero. These were guys who were seen as like some of the best wrestlers in the. It would and it would kind of, and I think it's the flip of that is actually something you could kind of correlate this to a little better. Like imagine if you had a thing where imagine if you had an incident where on Raw tomorrow night you had, or Raw next Monday, you had Will Ospreay, and I'm trying to think of people who are seen as like the great wrestlers. Will Ospreay and Okada and two other people just show up on Raw. It's like, how does AEW come back from this? Danielson's retired now, but it's like Ospreay, Okada, Kyle Fletcher, and Okada's a giant. Ospreay's a giant star too. So, but still, I mean, Chris Benoit won the world title. He was a pretty big star too. So, like, Ospreay, Okada, Kyle Fletcher, and pick a fourth. Just show up on Raw. Takeshita, yeah, perfect.
Yeah,
they just show up on Raw. It's like, how would AEW come back from that? That is what WCW got hit with, and it was kind of like, oh, there's no coming back now. Like, it was an uphill battle before, but that hill just became a straight line. That hill became a cliff. Yeah, that hill became a cliff. That's what happened.
And I mean, kind of without burying the lead, I'm sure a lot of you know the story here, but like when your Stone Colds and your Rocks and your Brock Lesnar's and your Undertakers and your Shawns all went away, these four guys, at least three of them, held that company down at one point in time. Like they're the
Kurt
top
Angle
guys. Yeah, Kurt Angle, but like those guys are the top guys in the company.
And then they found a guy named John Cena and another guy named Dave Bautista, and that kind of changed the game too.
But so JBL was asked the question on the podcast, which if you really please go listen to what happened when with Eddie Guerrero, talking about Eddie Guerrero with JBL. JBL says, he goes, they said, well, what was the locker room like? You have five of these guys coming over, all from the other company. Like, is there, hey, you guys are the competition? He goes, honestly, when the locker room found out we were getting Malenko, Jericho, Eddie, Perry, and Chris, we were ecstatic because we knew that we were getting an injection of really, really good guys. We were at the locker room was pumped. We could not wait for them to get here.
Doesn't surprise me because the guys they probably didn't want were the guys who were known politicians like Hogan. Yeah, like Hogan. We don't need Hogan.
And for JBL to say that, like, honestly, like I that was cool to hear. Like JBL always to me always something like a dick, and he's like, we loved those guys. Like,
you also got to think of where JBL is at this point in his career. This is 2000. JBL is half of a very popular tag team. He's not a main event guy yet. Main event guys tend to be more protective of their spots, I think, than guys who are on the upswing. And JBL was on the upswing at this point. Yeah. So maybe if they came in 2004. He may have had, maybe he wouldn't have had a slightly different too, because JBL's always had a good mind for that stuff too. But I can understand like
JBL doesn't become JBL without Eddie Guerrero.
That is very true. That is very, very true. He
goes, my career was nothing. He goes, they literally told me they're breaking me from my tag team. Brock's leaving the company, and you're taking Brock's spot, and you're fighting Eddie. And he said, and everyone pretty much looked at me and said, if you don't make this work, you're fired. And Eddie saved my life and saved my career and put me on a trajectory I'll never, ever, ever get back.
Yeah, no, he was the perfect guy to do that. But before we get there, Eddie has to find himself. And when Eddie comes in, he hasn't really found that spark yet. He's not Latino Heat yet. He's not Latino Heat yet. So, and it doesn't start off well. Eddie's first match is that the SmackDown after that Raw where they all show up in the front row. And Eddie does his trademark frog splash, which he did as a tribute to Art Barr, and he dislocates his elbow. And he's going to be out for a while. And so the Radicals becomes more of a trio. That's what they wound up calling them, the Radicals. Benoit and Saturn and Malenko, they become a trio, and they wind up becoming heels and aligning more with Triple H and the corporate side of things. When Eddie comes back, that's kind of fizzled out a little bit, like they're still doing it, and Eddie's still a heel. But he's gonna be the fun one of the four. because this is when he starts to. We haven't really gotten to the lie, cheat, and steal thing yet, but we're going to get into a womanizer part of the gimmick, almost like like a very turned up to 11 Latin lover stereotype of he's going to be he's going to find the person he wants. He's going to really, really, really try to endear himself to her. And it happens to be China, who is the most over female act in the company, but somebody who wasn't really super sexualized to this point.
Yeah,
But,
and
the one woman who was not super sexualized.
Yeah, like in today's times, I mean, people now love China, and I love that they love China. But growing up in the era where China was a thing, people called her a man. People made fun of her and said, "Oh, that's a guy." Like she was really fucked with, and people said horrible things about China. And it honestly, like I remember, it wasn't until this angle where China really like was deemed a beautiful woman and sought after, and another man seen her as attractive. Dude, Eddie put China in a different light than she was being posed as. Like she was trying to look more feminine and look beautiful and be that bombshell. And this storyline put China in this stratosphere that, like, I feel like this storyline really helped her in that. And I always remember like people like, China's hot now. Like it's I don't know. It's just that small little tweak in wrestling where we're gonna make you believe what we want you to believe, and it was just done so well.
And this is where we start to really Eddie starts to really lean into like Cheech Marin, and is like in his
he's an
idiot. Thing. Yeah, he's just like no, literally he owes a ton. That character is at least like 30% Cheech Marin.
Yeah,
just the way he talks, the way he kind of acts,
overdoes the Spanglish, like. Hey, lay home. You know what I'm saying? Like, he just really he's like fucking Cheech Marin and Oliver and Company. Like he's
right, exactly. Yeah. And they lean into the worst stereotypes here. Like he wants to invite China to his prom because he said he just got his GED. Like horrible. So
he leaned into the tension because he did it before, like
and coming out for the proms when he first comes out in the lowrider too, and that becomes a huge thing for him coming out in the lowrider. And so he does wind up
real quick. Sorry to segue this. So Lilly I collect figures now, and Lilly is like was seeing all the stuff that's going on and seeing the stuff that's been out there. They made a lowrider figure, like an actual
it's in that commercial.
Rider.
It's all over the place too.
Yes, it doesn't come with an Eddie, which is insane to me. It comes with a Rey Mysterio, but it's like $60 or $50 for
$39.99.
It was $50-$60.
Regular priced, it's $39.99.
It was on Black Cyber Monday deal for $20. I grabbed it. So it comes in Friday. I've been doing unboxings. I did unboxings for a few figures, so I'm getting new figures. I will do unboxing videos. So if you guys are into wrestling figures, I've been doing more unboxings with that, especially also the pro wrestling crates, so you guys can check that out. But on Friday, I'm going to be filming an unboxing of the Lowrider, so that kind of ties into this episode. If you guys
that thing's been all over that commercial. They won't stop playing where the guy's playing with the Bret Hart thing, and then he turns into an adult, and his kid is playing with the Rey Mysterio one.
Yeah.
Like that's not what the Bret Hart action figures look
like. They're using the actual new retro line of Sean and Bret, not the old
that was the Jax line. Like by the time Bret was like a top guy.
Yeah,
I mean you could get a Hasbro Bret. So and this is where you start to see the pieces of Eddie's character come together. They start having him talking about how China can't resist his Latino heat and different things like that. And the
lead pipe in the roses was my
favorite. Roses. And this is where he's really starting to learn and lean into cheating more and being just a lovable rogue, like that bad guy you can't help but cheer for.
Dude, they loved when he cheated. It became like the chair, bang against the floor, throw to your opponent and fall over dead. Like people, it's still to this day is used as the Eddie spot, and he did it with so many different things. Just like what was it with the he smacked the ref in the butt and then gave the guy the thing and like he hit you with that, Holmes. Like so good.
And he in this run with China, in this run he really starts to find himself. he really starts to put that last piece of he always had the in-ring side, but that character side was the last piece of the puzzle, and he found it and it clicked, and it was perfect.
Yeah.
And so he does eventually turn heel because China was posing for Playboy, and he didn't like that. And he winds up turning on China. He's heel for a very short run, and China's on her way out at that point. And
she also during the storyline wins the IC championship too.
Yeah, and she had it before.
Yeah.
But it was actually a match. It was Eddie and China, I believe, against Chavo or not Chavo. Eddie and China against Val Venus and Trish, I want to say. And I think China pinned Trish, if I'm not mistaken, to win the Intercontinental title. I think she may have won it from Eddie. Or no, I think Val was a champion. Whatever, it doesn't matter. If you're beating Val Venus, that's a good thing. So once that thing's kind of over and Eddie's a heel, he's kind of going back and forth with the European title, but he's also having some issues. He had a bad injury in 1999, and from 99 to 2001 and all the way through to this point, he's been no easy way to say this, abusing painkillers to get through the day, like a lot of wrestlers did at that time. Just to be able to wake up and go to bed at night, you would have to take a handful of pills because the road was killing you. The style was too high impact. Injuries weren't really being taken care of. So Eddie Guerrero, he had to go to rehab. And before he was even brought back from rehab, he was arrested for drunk driving. That was another huge thing. Like that's one of the huge reasons for premature deaths in that time was mixing pills and booze. That's we talked about Madonna's boyfriend, Louis Spicolli. That was what he did. That was what a lot of those guys did. But he was arrested and fired by the WWF in late 2001. He wouldn't be gone.
Everything. He lost everything. His wife left him. He couldn't see his kids. He lost his job. He was rock bottom.
Yeah. And like sometimes that's what it takes, and that's what it took for Eddie Guerrero. He fought his way back. He got right, reconciled with his family, started pounding the pavement. He did some New Japan shows. He did the first ever show for Ring of Honor, Wrestling Super Crazy. Like literally the first ever Ring of Honor show at the Murphy Rec Center in Philly. Eddie Guerrero was on it. And so it was shortly after that, like, okay, Eddie Guerrero seems to be right now. And it wasn't long. It was only a matter of maybe 6 months before WWE is calling, we need you back.
Yep.
Because they also saw the arms race that he was doing, like those shows in Australia, the World Wrestling All-Star show. If WWE wouldn't have brought him back and he was getting right, TNA would have swiped him up in a second.
Yeah.
In a second when they were getting started. And there was no way WWE was going to let a talent like Eddie Guerrero go there. So he comes back, winds up helping Chris Benoit in a ladder match against Rob Van Dam. They kind of teased that he's going to do a feud with Steve Austin, but Steve Austin leaves before that's going to happen. There's a thing where like Austin's in a bar and like Eddie Guerrero was in the back of the bar just giving him death eyes, but it never really escalated beyond that.
Real quick, I'm looking at stuff he did after he left WWE. So this is 4/11/2001. He goes on to wrestle in ICW on 11/30. So still in his struggles, but he wrestles low key in a match. He goes on to wrestle Super Crazy in IWA Puerto Rico. Just looking at some other names here that kind of just really jump off.
See that IWA Mid-South one? IWA Mid-South is a big one.
Yeah.
Three-way.
Christopher Daniels. He wrestles. He wrestles Nova.
Mm-hmm.
Super Crazy, and that's the ROH one, and that was for the IWA Puerto Rican Intercontinental Champion. He goes on to go against Juventud and Psychosis at.
They wrestled all the time.
Yeah. IWA Mid-South. He wrestles CM Punk and Rey Mysterio Jr. He goes on to then go against IWA again against CM Punk. Goes to Japan, and he's in a tag match with Minoru Tanaka and Black Tiger. So he's the old Black Tiger teaming with Black Tiger.
I believe that's probably Rocky at that time. That's probably Rocky.
Yeah,
Guerrero.
But that's kind of cool that like he teamed with his former gimmick.
It's a lot of fun. That's a cool callback. Well, I don't know if they ever acknowledged it. Like they always acknowledged Sayama was Tiger Mask and Masala was Tiger Mask. I think they had acknowledged Eddie was Black Tiger.
Yeah,
they were pretty open with that stuff in Japan. But when Eddie comes back, he winds up on SmackDown in pretty short order after they shuffle the roster split a little bit. And that was a Paul Heyman call.
He comes back to Raw at first.
Yeah, at first he's on Raw. They kind of tease this thing with Austin, but Austin leaves. And then they shuffle the deck quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I forget who was doing the booking mainly for Raw, but Paul Heyman was kind of the head of creative on SmackDown. I think it was Brian Gewirtz on Raw. And Paul Heyman was mainly running SmackDown until him and Stephanie just kind of stopped really being able to see eye to eye, and Paul got shunted away for a little bit. But when Paul was running SmackDown, there was the legendary SmackDown 6. So the SmackDown 6 was this. They were usually in tag teams against one another. It was Chris Benoit, Kurt Angle, Edge, Rey Mysterio, Eddie Guerrero, Chavo Jr. And when they introduced the SmackDown tag titles, they all feuded over them. You could put any two of the 6 against one another in a match on SmackDown, and you knew it was going to blow the doors off the place. And this is where you really get into the kind of lovable, even though he was a heel at first and he very quickly became babyface, you get that lovable trickster Eddie Guerrero that everybody adores, as far as him. And that's where you get the lie, cheat, and steal theme, like mantra, and the theme music and everything. Because at first it was we lie, we cheat, we steal. Those are both Eddie and Chavo.
Yeah.
And they are just having these fun vignettes where they go to this rich person's house acting like they're pool cleaners, and they wind up throwing a big pool party at her house while she's not around, and just little things like that. Just these fun, mischievous, but they're going to be right up front about how they're going to lie and they're going to cheat and they're going to steal. And it even comes to a head with them being like a huge tag team and winning at the Survivor Series. They win the tag team titles, and even though they're heels, they're so popular, they're becoming baby faces. And then that stack.
He also held the U.S. title and the tag team titles at one time, didn't he? He was a dual champion.
He's been a 4-time tag team title winner.
Yeah.
No,
and he did have.
He had the U.S. title as well as the tag team champions with Chavo, I believe, right?
I believe he did. Yeah.
Like, you mean like synonymous
at the same time? Yeah, he had 2 belts.
I believe so. And this is where all those things happen, where he's doing the cheating, the lying. And for a while, he's just mainly a tag guy. But yeah, he's always a factor as far as being part of the U.S. title. And because it took a while for them to reintroduce the U.S. title. It was gone for a while, and then they decided Raw and SmackDown needed secondary titles. And Eddie was one of the first guys to be involved in that U.S. title scene. But then by 2004, it's like Brock's leaving, and this is right before that JBL thing you're talking about. Like the world title picture has been Brock Lesnar, Kurt Angle, Big Show for a little bit as a bridge. Big Show actually wins the title for like a month, but Angle's beat up. Angle's feeling the pain right now, and Brock's leaving, and we need something here. So that's something they're finding is let's let Eddie Guerrero ride, because Chris Benoit's going the Raw. He's winning the title over there. He's going to be the Raw champion. So Chris Benoit was on SmackDown, wins the Royal Rumble, but then this is where they invented that whole thing they still do, where the winner of the Rumble gets to choose which title they fight for, and it's a kind of a sneaky way to do brand switches when you have a split. The first guy they did that with was Benoit. So Benoit, it winds up being Benoit, Triple H, and Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 20. And then they do a mini Royal Rumble, a 15-man Royal Rumble on SmackDown, which is won by Eddie Guerrero, who goes on to, in one of my all-time favorite matches in his hometown of El Paso, with his mother and a few of his brothers in the crowd, wins that WWE Championship against Brock Lesnar. And I love how like just the end of that, Goldberg comes in and interferes because they're setting up Goldberg versus Lesnar, but that's not the finish. Like, Goldberg spears Lesnar, but Lesnar kicks out. That's not the finish. And the title gets in the ring, and Brock goes to the F5, but Eddie DDTs Brock on the belt, and Taz does a great commentary job. Taz is flipping out because he's the heel commentator, and he's so mad because Eddie cheated. He's like, Eddie cheated with that move, and it's like, well, yeah, he's Eddie Guerrero. He cheats. He always tells you he cheats. Why are you mad? Like that's the perfect antidote to that. Yeah, he cheated. What do you expect? It's Eddie Guerrero, and he just delivers that frog splash, and you can tell how much, like, you can sometimes see through the work and see when it's, we talked to somebody about this, about when they won a title and they stopped being the character and started being them, and it was before they went through the curtain. and it can happen sometimes. And you could see where Eddie Guerrero, the performer, kind of stopped, and Eddie Guerrero, the person, became in control there. And it's when he jumps in the crowd and he's with his mom. Yeah, and it's a great moment. It's one of the all-time great moments in wrestling for me. And yeah, so he goes on. He has a great match with Angle at WrestleMania 20. Shaw Guerrero, yeah.
Shaw Guerrero is a burlesque performer. I met Shaw. I met his wife. I met Eddie's wife, and he has 2 daughters, right?
I know he has at least one. Shaw was the one that was a wrestler very briefly.
Yeah, I met them both. They were icons in Philly one time.
Yeah, Shaw was Raquel Diaz for a little bit. I don't think she ever made it to the main roster. She was in NXT, and she is married to Matt Rewalt, the former Aiden English, who is now one of the commentators for TNA.
Yep.
Yeah, they've been married for like almost 10 years now, I believe. And I'm assuming they met at the NXT. So yeah, Eddie is now kind of the man. This is Eddie's first world title, and it's unfortunately not going to last very long. And it is going to bridge to JBL like we talked about.
And fun fact about that too, JBL, they said, okay, maybe Eddie's not getting as popular anymore, or he's falling off, or because a lot of people were worried if he was going to be able to carry the world championship. I guess that was like one of the Vince's things. Would he be able to do it? I know when they went to Germany, he kind of shot on the German crowd because they booed somebody, and Eddie was mad that they booed him, and he didn't take kindly to it. And I think JBL and Eddie both got in trouble for doing Zig Heils at the but
JBL got in a lot of trouble for that.
But JBL was like, a lot of us did it, and he goes, honestly, it happened more than you would like to think when we did live shows or on taped shows in Germany. Like that was what heels just did there.
I think JBL is the one that got caught with a camera doing it, though.
Yes, that's 100% what happened. But
JBL got a lot of heat for that.
He said Eddie immediately was already booking how he was going to lose it and help get the next guy over. And that's just how he was. Yeah.
And also, like, there was also rumors at the time and kind of talk at the time that the pressure of being champion was kind of taking its toll on Eddie. And
it did. Yeah. They talked about that as well. Yeah.
Vince was a guy who Vince likes big dudes. Vince, like, not that Eddie, and unfortunately, I think helped expedite his demise. Eddie put on a lot of muscle. Eddie packed about as much muscle as he could onto his frame, but there's no steroid to make it taller. Unfortunately, there's no steroid to make it taller. And if you have that, 5'11" Mexican dude, and you have the 6'4" blonde Texan who loves Ronald Reagan, who do you think Vince McMahon's gonna pick? Who do you think Vince McMahon's gonna pick? And that's basically what happened there. And JBL got a long run. And by the time it's time for JBL to wind down, and even at the point Eddie was a champion, there was already a guy. By the time Eddie won that title, there's a guy waiting in the wings. He's not ready yet. He's not ready quite yet. But everybody knows whoever has that belt going into like at WrestleMania 20 around that time, whoever wins that title is keeping it warm for John Cena because they've got something. He was a U.S. champion. It was too soon at 20, but you could tell John Cena was next. And then Dave Bautista caught fire too, and so those are going to be your 2 guys that are going to.
There's your monsters. There's your big guys.
Yeah. There's your perfectly crystal cut for WWE guys. Like if you would have create Vince McMahon's dream wrestler in a lab, attitude, everything, like presence, look, it's John Cena. Like even more than Hulk Hogan, it's John Cena because John Cena.
We talked about this earlier on a different podcast. I think John Cena, in my opinion, surpassed Hulk Hogan just as the guy in professional wrestling. I know Hogan gets that credit, but I feel like John was just everything you wanted Hogan to be and then some. Like just the way he conducted himself, the way he handled the business, the way everything about him was exactly how it needed to be done.
Well, as a professional, but the thing is, Hogan's peak. At Hogan's peak, as a wrestler, he was a bigger household name than John Cena.
Sure.
Now, you can say John Cena he's definitely had a better career in Hollywood, but if that's the metric, then The Rock's the guy. But The Rock only did it in wrestling for a little bit.
I think when people think of in modern day times, when people think who are pro wrestlers that are actors, I think the two they say is always like Hogan's not even the name anymore. Like,
no, he's also
it's
he's also
John Cena
70.
and The Rock. Yeah,
Yeah, and the third is Dave Bautista.
Yeah, Dave Bautista. Yeah,
and Dave Bautista's the best actor of them all, and it's not close.
You're not wrong.
Yeah, so the whole thing with Eddie and that pressure was, yeah, he probably would have gotten it again, and let's kind of push forward to that, where Eddie is still a big factor through most of the rest of the year, but by the time 2005 rolls around and we're headed into WrestleMania 21, it's really something where they're starting to tease that Eddie's going to turn, and he's having this little friendly rivalry with Ray, but you get that sense that it's not going to be friendly for much longer. And finally, you get it where Eddie just turns heel viciously, and they change his music around so he's not. It's not that, because that music he had was just going to always elicit a babyface pop. So they do a remix where it's a little less upbeat. It's a little more intense, and that's when he has like the Grand Theft Auto inspired shirts and everything. He even wrestles that first ECW One Night Stand. He wrestles Benoit, and he's a complete heel. He's just like stone face in the crowd. And it seemed like he was kind of going to veer the other way eventually. But the feud with Ray is the big thing here, and it comes with that allegation that Ray's little blonde son, whatever's going to happen to this kid, Dominic, what's he, like 6 years old at this point?
Yeah. What's this kid ever going to accomplish?
What's this kid ever going to do? Is actually Eddie's son and not Ray's son. That Eddie had.
You didn't have good swimmers, essay.
So yeah, there's and paternity tests played out. Yeah, he's Eddie's son. Where that only works if you never saw Ray without his mask. That's the only way that ever works.
Yeah,
because if you see Dom and you see Ray on that, you're like, oh yeah, there's no question about this one. So
how Ray still looks younger.
Well, he's only 21. That's why.
Jesus.
So as you can only do in professional wrestling, they're going to settle this in the ring by putting the custody papers for Dominic. This is so stupid when you say it out loud. The custody papers for Dominic are going to go over the ring, and we're going to have a ladder match. And the winner of this ladder match is going to have custody of Dominic Mysterio.
And it'll never. And it's so
matter where his mom.
And it's so stupid. It'll never be used again.
Oh man.
And Dom had a figure because of this storyline. There's a build Dom figure. Like, there's a Dom figure when he's 9 years old with his bleach blonde hair. Like,
I think I know Vicky Guerrero, I think, helped Ray in the match. I don't know if Mysterio's wife helped either.
Yeah.
I forget how that all worked out. I forget how that all worked out. But Ray wins, and Ray gets custody. And then they start telegraphing a babyface turn for Eddie, and he's in this program with Batista. And Vince McMahon or Stephanie McMahon has sworn up and down that Eddie was Batista had to take some time off for injury, and Eddie was going to win the title. But as that's going to happen, and I remember this is just like one of the most shocking out of nowhere things that on November 13th, 2005 in Minneapolis, Chavo Guerrero this poor guy, Chavo Guerrero, that he has been so successful and has found this great career doing all this stuff in Hollywood is amazing, because he was a big part of the Benoit thing. He got texts from Benoit. But before that happened,
he's the last person, probably one of the last people to contact or have physical or any type of phone conversation, text messages with Chris.
Probably the last person.
Yeah,
probably the last person.
Yeah.
So Eddie Guerrero is found unconscious on his hotel room floor. He was brushing his teeth and passed out with a toothbrush still in his hand. He was still alive when he was discovered, but by the time the EMTs get there, it's too late. He had acute heart failure due to underlying arteriosclerotic, high cholesterol, bad cholesterol.
He had bad heart.
Yeah, he had a bad heart.
Chavo's trying to save his life the entire time the paramedics are going in there. Like,
sorry.
And
dude, that's fucking crushing.
Yeah.
Is that the worst wrestling death, you think? You think that's?
No,
You think
Owen
that's?
Hart.
It's got to be.
I
Hart.
mean,
Owen Hart's the
Owen.
worst.
Yeah.
Owen Hart's the worst. Owen Hart's worst because, like, not that this wasn't preventable.
It happened in front
but
of
being
so,
live
live
crowd.
in front of all those people,
Yeah.
shoosh.
And they
Owen
don't
Hart's
stop the show.
was so damn preventable. Yeah, Owen Hart's always going to be the worst for me. This is up there though. This is bad.
It's up. Yeah, it's really high. Like Eddie's like I was a kid when Owen died, and I remember being upset, but I still remember a lot of fans were still like kids of my age were still like not fully in on it and being like, haha, the Nuggets dead because he was a bad guy, and they kind of like cheered about it a little bit in school. And I just remember being like, no, that's not cool. Like, because I was smarter, you know what I mean? But Eddie's was one I remember hearing on the news, and I was like, oh fuck. Like that,
and then like a few months later, they're kind of using it like they're doing the Orton and Ray feud, and Orton's like Eddie's in hell and all this stuff. It's like, come on.
But I mean, realistically though, any pro wrestler, if you're dead, they would 100% want you to use that 100%. Like when Punk did the whole Paul Bearer thing and he was dumping ashes on her, he's like, Paul would have loved that shit. And I'm like, you're not wrong. Like, if I'm dead, use me in a storyline, please. Like, you know what I mean? That's just part of being in this industry.
One last wish,
you know what I mean?
Like, just throw me in it one more time. I might not actually be in the ring, but I'll be in the story.
Yeah, it's like a
literally use me. I'll bump my ass off when I'm dead. I'm not gonna feel it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But so unfortunately that essentially Eddie, we lose Eddie. He goes on. Obviously, there's a whole bunch of other stories that go on after that. It rocked the locker room.
So he died in 2005.
Yeah, very late. Like
literally
November.
had just. So for the record, he became the Grand Slam champ in 2004, and like literally just a year later. Yeah. That's sad.
Yeah. We're like video games, right? So here's a list of video games you can play with Eddie Guerrero. Some of them are kind of fun.
One of them is damn freaky.
Yeah.
One of them is freaky. It came out after he died. It was like SmackDown versus Raw 06. And one of the stories in there is the Undertaker's feuding with Eddie Guerrero, and he turns into a zombie. And it came out after Eddie died.
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah, Eddie dies in the video game in the story mode. Yeah.
And then,
WCW versus the World, WCW NWO World Tour, Virtual Pro Wrestling 64, WCW Nitro, Shin Nippo Pro Wrestling Tuken Resident 3. I definitely messed that up, but I own both those Japanese games.
Your Spanish is way better than your Japanese.
Yeah. WCW NWO Revenge, WCW NWO Thunder, and he's an unlockable.
Right, we can't get that Stardom money. This is the whole problem. That's why we can't get it.
Yeah, fuck, god damn it. Mayhem, No Mercy. Know Your Role, Betrayal, Authority, like essentially every video game after that.
He's
Eddie's
still in those games. He's still
games,
usually in those games.
Yeah. Billy Superstar Graham officiated his funeral. I did not know that.
And then was laid to rest nearby.
Yeah.
After he passed away.
Accomplishments. He is the AAA World Tag Team Champion one time with Art Barr. He's in the AAA Hall of Fame in 2008. Cauliflower Alley Club. He was the Men's Wrestler of the Year award in 2008. As part of the Wrestling Guerreros. The ECW Television Champion. Yeah.
He was dead.
Okay, so Cauliflower Alley is a legacy thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thing.
Some of this will going to be stuff after he passed away. ECW Television Champion 2 times. The Hardcore Hall of Fame class of 2015. Independent Wrestling Association Mid-South is the IWA Mid-South Champion 1 time. The LAWA Heavyweight Champion 1 time. The Best of Super Juniors 3, 96. The Junior Heavyweight Super Grade Tag Team 96 with Grace Sasuke. PWF World Tag Team Champions with Hector Guerrero 1 time.
How did you just say Great Sasuke right?
That's what I was just wondering.
Gangster.
Thank you.
Pro Wrestling Illustrated comeback of the year 99. Most Inspirational Wrestler 2002-2004. Stanley Weston Award 2005. Ranked number 2 in the top 500 wrestlers of PWI in 2004, ranked number 81 of top 500 wrestlers in 2003, ranked 18th in 100 tag teams in 2003, WCW Cruiserweight Champion 2 times, U.S. Champion WCW 1 time, WCW Tournament winner 96, Battle Bowl winner 96, World Cup Wrestling 95. WWA International Cruiserweight Champion one time, WWA Trios Champion one time, WWA World Championship one time, WWE Champion one
Tell me when you
time,
want me to take over.
European Champion 2 times, WWE's United States Champion 1 time, Intercontinental Champion 2 times, Tag Team Champions 4 times with Chavo. 4 times, 2 times with Chavo, once with Tajiri. I didn't know he was a tag team champ with Tajiri.
Chavo got hurt.
Awesome.
Chavo
I
got
love
hurt.
Tajiri. Once with Rey Mysterio. Hall of Fame class of 2006. United States Champion Tournament winner 2003. 15-man SmackDown Battle Royal Rumble winner 2004. The 11th Triple Crown champion. The 6th Grand Slam champion. And he goes on to in the Wrestling Observer newsletter for Best Interview 2005, Feud of the Year in 2004 with Los Gringos and AAA, Feud of the Year 95 with Dean Malenko, Most Charismatic Wrestler in 2004-2005, Tag Team of the Year 94, Tag Team of the Wrestler of the Year 2002, and the Wrestling Newsletter Hall of Fame 2006.
Yeah, hell of a career. Even though it got cut very, very short.
Wait a minute. You said all of that, but we're not going to talk about how he won 3 out of the 5 luchas de apuestas. You went through everything else.
Yeah, he was the winner for his hair against another hair match. He won another hair match. He lost a hair match.
He only lost 1 hair match. Only 1.
Yeah, he lost a championship mask, and yeah, he's 2 out of 5. Yeah. He lost 2 and won 3.
Yeah, he won 3 out of 5. That's 3 out of 5.
Dude's a goat, man. He's so goddamn good. He's one of those wrestlers that if you've never watched before and you put it on for somebody, he just stands out. He's fucking one of the best. Like
he's very, very high up on my list. Very high up on my list. Probably, if not top 5, definitely top 10.
Frog Splash, the 3 Amigos, which is used every time. The beat on the chest and the shimmy.
His legacy really does live on through the modern generation. He is one of the more influential wrestlers of his time as far as passing on things to this generation. Between the 3 Amigos, between the
making heels cool.
Yeah, well, yeah, of course. Not even a heel. He was more like a Steve Austin. A lot of the time, he was a baby face. But it was acceptable for him to cheat because it was his whole thing. Yeah. Just those spots where he pretends to cheat to get the other guy in trouble, they still live on. Yeah. That is going to get that Eddie reaction, like the Chop gets a Ric Flair reaction. It's that associated with him.
Yeah.
I think the first match I remember watching of his was him versus Kurt Angle, and I'm like, it took him 5 whole minutes to take that boot off, like
because it was laced up to his shin.
Could I finish, please? So what I was saying though was I was not aware of like the whole light sheet steel thing. So I'm like, everyone can clearly see that he's taking his shoe off. Like, how is he going to pull this off? And then after watching the whole thing, I was like, oh, they don't even care.
Not only did he
like
encouraged. He didn't even just take the shoe off. When he hits him with a small package, he still has the wherewithal to wrap his ankles around the bottom rope. So it even cheats the pin. Like that's just Eddie did the small things. So like the so important.
That is a guy you could tell grew up in a wrestling ring. He had that intrinsic knowledge of how wrestling functions.
Do you know who I see on the independent scene that every time I see him, I think, holy crap, this kid can be a little independent Eddie?
Who's that?
Sebastian Amor from Los Toxicos.
Okay, yeah, he's got the presence.
God, I love that kid. That mullet, the mustache, like he's old Eddie, and like the way I'm in heat, baby. Like he loves, like you could tell he's very influenced by him. That kid is.
I love Los Toxicos. I love me some Los Toxicos.
Yeah, great. Out of the Creator Pro, definitely check them out. But like, man, Eddie,
number one contenders, by the way, to the PPW tag team titles.
BP. I know we're live, but just Jesus Christ, get those kids some titles. They're so good. I love them. Anyway, I mean, what are you talking about? Get those kids titles. They have to earn it, right? That's pro wrestling.
Well,
you can't just
not necessarily. A couple of months ago they stole a pair. So there you go. There's a little more for that for you. Literally they were double shotting, and I'm at PPW, And I think this had to have been. Was it October? No, I think it was either September, October. We knew they were double shotting. They were doing AXW. They're coming over to us afterward, and they come in with the AXW tag team titles. I'm like, what? What's this? They stole them. They stole them from Security Inc.
I love that. Security Inc.'s another really fun team.
Oh,
I love those
great.
guys.
They're great.
Love those guys. But just a reminder, once again, next week we'll be doing Saturday night main event, the history of. So make sure you tune in for us. And if you don't, he'll have you thrown at it here. As right. Well as the next week after that, the ECW Television Championship, where we're probably going to talk a lot more Eddie and some other people. The title is back there. You can see it hanging out.
A lot of Rob Van Dam on that show. A lot of
Mikey Whipwreck.
A lot of Jason Knight and JT Smith, I think had it once.
Yeah. And then we're going to be doing 2 pre-recorded episodes, but if you're a membership, you might see them early. We'll be doing the TT Awards that'll air on the 24th, Christmas Eve, so you guys can, on your travels, bore your entire car ride with our voices driving you to your next destination, talking about who we think win our TT Awards this year. And you can play along as well. They'll be on social media. Put your comments below. Maybe you could influence us with your picks, so make sure you get your comments in.
And if you're local, you might see a little special announcement. We got to make sure we iron out the details on that.
Yeah, we might be recording it in on location. That maybe we'll invite some people that can come and participate
at BP's second home.
Used to be my second home. I don't go nearly as much. And then we'll be closing out the year when you're driving around or driving to your New Year's parties. You can go and check out the TT predictions for 2025. We're going to make some bold predictions going in the next year. See if we're right. Have we ever gotten any of them right?
No.
I think I got close. I made a prediction back in the old day when we were at the table, and I said if Triple H gets involved, I guarantee you're going to see play between companies. I think people are going to come, and this is before Forbidden Doors. This is before any of that. And now Triple H talking about people can go work independent scenes possibly coming up.
Did we do one Oh, they're going to ask for so much money. Did we do one last year?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't.
Do we have the predictions written? Okay.
I wrote
that was
them
my
down.
next question.
Lily has them written down in a notebook with 14 other notebooks.
I actually know exactly which notebook it's in. I remember I was using my purple pen, so that even helps. This is why I write things down. Y'all laugh at me, but I remember things better when I write them down.
She has every Monday Night Raw fashion for like the entire year too.
Oh,
yes,
okay, cool.
Not everyone, because I stopped watching somewhere around summertime.
Yeah.
Well, we have to unearth that. We have to unearth that. We have to unearth.
I'll find it. I'll send them in the chat.
Or we'll just go back and listen to the episode. That'll be someone's job.
I'm far too lazy for that.
I'm sorry. I already listened to 3,182 minutes of your.
She did. She did. That is really actually correct. But that's going to do it for us here at Tornado Tag. We'll see you guys next week live again, 7:05. This one went a little long, but we don't care because it's about Eddie Guerrero. We'll talk for 14 hours if we want to. But make sure you go and go grab some Eddie merch. Fun fact, Eddie's not on the network. His documentary is not on the network anymore. WB took it down. Judgment Day 2004, not on the network. So there's some stuff of Eddie. If you want to go seek it out, you're gonna have to go outside of Peacock.
I don't think when Worlds Collide is on there, and that's a phenomenal show. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it is on there.
But just my recommendation is go check out What Happened When with Conrad and JBL talking about the JBL and Eddie Guerrero feud, because it's really, really good. But that's gonna do it for us. We'll see you guys next time. We'll see you next week. We're out of here. Bye.